Everyone mocked her for marrying a plain mountain man, but he was the true heir of Below, the small village of Eldon's Hollow lay cradled in a valley, where the winds whispered secrets of old curses and forgotten kings. The villagers went about their daily work, yet their eyes often lifted toward the slopes above, watching for the faint shadows that sometimes moved unnaturally across the cliffs. Lady Alara of Thornwood had arrived that morning in a carriage gilded with her family's crest. The road had been treacherous, lined with stones and frost that made the horses' hooves slip. She had been married off at the age of 19, her parents claiming it was for her safety and the good of their estate. Yet as she looked out at the lonely peaks and the humble village below, a shiver ran down her spine, not from cold, but from unease. Her intended husband, Eric, waited for her at the edge of the village. He was a simple man, dressed in rough-spun wool and leather boots, his dark hair unkempt and eyes as still as mountain lakes. He was plain, some might say ordinary, and the villagers had made no secret of their scorn. "A noble lady for a mountain fool," they had whispered. "She will regret this before the frost thaws." Alara's heart tightened with the sting of embarrassment. She had imagined a husband like those in the ballads, strong, regal, commanding. Instead, she saw a man who carried himself with quiet dignity but no grandeur. Yet something about him made her uneasy. It was not fear, it was curiosity. Eric bowed slightly, not with the flourish of a nobleman but with a simple, measured respect that seemed both humble and commanding at the same time. "Lady Alara," he said, his voice calm yet carrying a weight she could not explain, "I am honored to have you here." Alara hesitated. Words failed her. She had expected arrogance or awkwardness, perhaps even cruelty. Instead, she found herself facing a man who bore his plainness like a shield, quiet, patient, unshakable. The villagers crowded around, their eyes filled with judgment. Children whispered, "Is this really Our Lady's husband?" The men snorted, and even the women shook their heads. Alara felt her cheeks burn, yet she held her chin high. She would not cry. She would not show weakness, not here, not now. For the first days, life was quiet, almost painfully simple. Alara was given a small home near Eric's, a modest dwelling built of stone and timber. The wind howled around the peaks, rattling the shutters and making the fire crackle in the hearth. She spent the evenings gazing out of the windows at the vast mountains, feeling the weight of isolation pressing down on her. Eric's company was a mystery. He spoke little, yet when he did, his words carried a strange wisdom. He could identify the herbs in the forest by scent alone, climb cliffs with ease, and even calm the wild mountain dogs with a soft murmur. Alara observed him from a distance, irritation mingling with fascination. How could a man so plain wield such quiet power? One evening, as the sun bled red behind the mountains, Alara followed him up a narrow path leading to a cliff that overlooked the valley. The wind tugged at her cloak and the stones beneath her feet were slippery. Eric moved like he belonged to the mountain, every step sure, every gesture natural. At the cliff's edge, he stopped and turned to her. "Do you see the village below?" he asked. "Everything you know feels small from up here. The world is larger, deeper. You cannot measure its power by the walls you live behind." Alara's throat tightened. His eyes were dark pools, reflecting the last light of the dying sun. She realized then that he saw more than she could, more than anyone else ever had. And yet there was sadness there too, a burden he carried silently, like the weight of unseen crowns and forgotten promises. Days passed and the villagers' whispers grew sharper. "She spends too much time with him," they said. "Does she not see how plain he is? How ordinary?" But Alara found herself drawn to him, to the quiet strength that seemed to flow from him like a hidden river. She began to notice small details. The way he moved through the forest, the way his hands worked the soil in the garden, the way he looked at her with a calm patience that both comforted and unnerved her. One night a storm rolled in, the clouds dark and heavy, the wind tearing through the valley like a living thing. Eric was gone when she woke, leaving the door open to the howl of the night. Concern gripped her. She wrapped her cloak tightly and ventured out, following the faint glow of a lantern up the winding mountain path. She found him at the edge of a cliff, standing in the wind and rain, his figure carved against the stormy sky. Lightning flashed, illuminating a strange, almost imperceptible mark on his chest, a sigil glowing faintly like the reflection of fire in water. Ilara gasped. What is that?" she asked, her voice barely carrying over the storm. Eric did not answer immediately. He looked at her, his eyes dark and unreadable. Then he said softly, "Something I cannot explain yet, something that has followed my family for generations." Her heart thumped with a strange mixture of fear and fascination. "A curse," she whispered. "Perhaps," he admitted. "Or a gift, or both. Some truths are dangerous, meant only for those who are ready." Ilara's thoughts raced. She had always believed the stories of kings and magic were old tales meant to entertain children. But now, standing on this cliff, drenched and trembling, she felt the weight of something ancient pressing down upon her. Something real. For the first time, she understood that Eric's plainness was a mask. Beneath it was a power, restrained but immense, tempered by patience and sorrow. He was not the simple mountain man everyone mocked. He was something else entirely. That night, they returned to the village in silence. The storm left the air heavy with rain and the scent of wet earth. Ilara could not sleep, her mind turning over every glance, every word, every quiet action of Eric's. She realized she had been wrong to judge him. And yet she also knew that knowing the truth would not make her path easier. Over the next few weeks, she watched him more closely. She saw the way the animals responded to him, the way the villagers unconsciously deferred to his presence despite their mockery, and the way he carried himself with a dignity that needed no crown or title. Eric, too, began to observe her. He noted her curiosity, her courage, and her tendency to push herself too hard to prove that she belonged here. He did not scold her, but he guided her subtly, teaching her to move through the mountains safely, to understand the signs of the weather, the whispers of the trees, and the hidden paths that led to safety. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the mountains gold, Ilara followed him to a hidden grove, where the air smelled of pine and earth. There, in a clearing surrounded by ancient stones, she saw the first hint of something extraordinary. Strange markings were carved into the rocks, symbols she did not understand, glowing faintly in the dying light. "Do you see them?" Eric asked, his voice soft. "They are old, very old. My ancestors left them to guide those who are meant to find the truth." Ilara traced her fingers over the glowing symbols. A shiver ran down her spine. "What truth?" "The truth that the world is not as simple as it seems," he replied. "That power can hide in the quietest places, and destiny can wear the plainest face." Ilara felt a strange warmth in her chest, a mixture of fear, awe, and something she could not name. She wanted to run, to flee from the mystery, but her feet stayed rooted to the earth. She could not turn away, not now. That night she dreamed of fire and shadows, of kings and mountains, of a man who was both ordinary and extraordinary. She dreamed of herself walking beside him, not as a noblewoman with titles and expectations, but as someone who understood in some small way the weight he carried. Morning came, pale and silver, and with it a realization she could not deny. The man she had been sent to marry was more than a mountain man. He was a force of nature, hidden beneath humility and plainness, and she felt, inexplicably, that her own life had changed the moment she set eyes on him. As they stood together on the cliffs, watching the mist curl around the peaks, Ilara whispered, almost to herself, "I do not know what you are, but I know you are not what they say." Eric's eyes met hers, steady and unreadable, yet something flickered there, a faint warmth, a quiet acknowledgement. And for the first time the mountains did not feel cold or lonely. They felt alive, full of secrets and possibilities, and Alara knew, with a certainty that both terrified and thrilled her, that her life was no longer her own. The wind swept across the cliffs, carrying a promise she could not yet name, the beginning of a journey, a hidden destiny, and a man whose plainness was only the surface of something far greater. And far below, the villagers continued their whispers, unaware that the man they mocked was the key to a story older than the mountains themselves. The mountains were quieter now, their cliffs softened by the mist that lingered like memory. Alara walked beside Eric along a hidden path, the scent of pine and damp earth heavy in the air. The morning sun filtered through the clouds, painting the forest in pale gold. Though days had passed since her first glimpse of the glowing sigil on Eric's chest, she could not shake the feeling that the mountains themselves were alive with secrets. Eric led her to a part of the forest she had never seen. Ancient stones jutted from the ground, carved with symbols that hummed faintly in the air. Some were broken, others intact, but all bore a strange beauty, as if they had been waiting for her. "These markings," Eric said softly, "are older than the kingdoms of men. My family left them here long ago, to hide what could not be spoken in words. Only those who are ready can see their meaning." Alara knelt and traced a finger over one of the symbols. The stone was cool, smooth, and strangely alive beneath her touch. A shiver ran down her spine. "Why are they glowing?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Eric's dark eyes met hers. "They respond to truth and courage. Only those who walk the path willingly can awaken their power." Alara's heart quickened. Courage, truth, she had felt neither fully in this place. But being here beside him, with the mountains whispering around her, she felt a stirring inside, an awakening she could not yet name. For days they explored the hidden corners of the forest. Eric taught her to read the patterns of the clouds, to notice the faintest movement of the wind, and to listen to the quiet language of the mountains. He moved with a grace that belied his plain appearance, climbing cliffs with ease and stepping over roots as though the earth itself welcomed him. The villagers continued to whisper behind closed doors. "The lady spends all her time with him," they said. "Does she not see how ordinary he is? She will regret it." But Alara did not hear them. She was learning to see Eric as he truly was. Every quiet gesture, every patient glance, every soft word revealed a depth of understanding and strength she had never known. He was not ordinary. He was extraordinary in ways that could not be measured by gold, titles, or beauty. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in orange and violet, Eric led her to the edge of a cliff overlooking the valley. Below, the village seemed tiny, almost fragile. The mountains stretched endlessly beyond, jagged peaks fading into mist. "Do you understand now?" Eric asked. "Why the mountains have always been my home, and why I have always felt the world was larger than the villages and castles below?" Alara looked at him, feeling the truth of his words deep in her chest. "I think I am beginning to," she admitted. "The mountains, they are alive. And you belong to them, but not entirely. You are something more." Eric's expression was unreadable, yet a faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "You are not afraid," he said softly. "That is good. Fear clouds the heart, it blinds the mind." Alara frowned. "Afraid of what?" He did not answer at once. Instead, he turned to the cliff's edge, letting the wind whip through his hair. "Of the truth," he said finally. "The truth of who I am and what I am destined to be." Alara's heart tightened. She had felt it, the sense that Eric carried a secret larger than the mountains themselves. She wanted to ask, to know, but the words caught in her throat. Some truths, she realized, were not spoken lightly. That night the wind howled through the village, rattling the shutters and making the fire crackle in the hearth. Alara lay awake, thinking of Eric, the glowing sigil and the ancient stones. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. It was Eric. His eyes were dark and unreadable, yet there was a weight in his expression she had never seen before. "I must tell you something," he said quietly. "Something that may change everything." Alara sat up, her heart racing. What is it? Eric took a deep breath. I am not who the villagers think I am. I am the heir of a kingdom that was lost long ago. My family was betrayed. My parents were killed, and I was hidden here in these mountains to protect me from those who would claim the throne through treachery and magic. Alara stared at him, unable to speak. The words were incredible, impossible, yet the weight of truth in his eyes left no doubt. You are a prince, she whispered. A prince, he admitted. But more than that, a guardian of a legacy that has been waiting for me to return. There are those who would see me destroyed before I can reclaim it. That is why I have hidden, why I appear to be ordinary. Alara felt a shiver run through her. Why didn't you tell me? Because the truth is dangerous, Eric replied. Because to know it is to take part in it. You must decide if you are willing to walk this path with me. Her heart pounded. She did not know what to say. Fear, awe, and something stronger stirred within her. She had come here thinking she would marry a simple mountain man, and instead she faced a man who carried the weight of kingdoms, curses, and ancient magic on his shoulders. She began, then faltered. Eric took her hand gently. I will not ask you to choose blindly. Watch, learn, and then decide. But know this, the path ahead will not be easy. There are forces that would see me and you destroyed. Days turned into weeks. Alara stayed close, learning the ways of the mountains and listening to Eric's stories of the lost kingdom. He spoke of cities carved from stone, of kings who wielded power through wisdom and magic, of betrayals that had toppled dynasties. The more she listened, the more she realized that the man she had once dismissed as plain was a force beyond measure, tempered by patience, humility, and a rare courage. One morning, as dawn broke over the peaks, a shadow fell across the village. A rider approached, clad in dark armor, carrying a banner that bore the sigil of a long-forgotten house. The villagers recoiled, whispering in fear. Ilara's heart clenched. She recognized the symbol from Eric's stories, the family that had betrayed his ancestors, the ones who would see him dead to claim the throne. Eric's expression hardened. They have found me, he said softly, and they will not leave without a fight. Ilara's hands trembled, but she did not move away. She realized then that fear could not guide her. If she was to stay with him, to walk the path he had chosen, she must stand beside him. The rider dismounted and approached the village, his face hidden beneath a helm. Eric of the mountains, he called, voice cold and sharp. You cannot hide any longer. The throne awaits, and so does justice. Eric stepped forward, placing himself between the rider and the villagers. Justice. You speak of murder and betrayal as justice, he said, voice steady. You will not take what is not yours. The rider laughed, a sound that sent a shiver through the valley. Then you will die defending it, and so will she if you do not submit. Ilara's heart raced. She had never held a sword nor fought in battle, yet she felt a strange calm as if the mountains themselves lent her strength. She took a step forward. You will not harm him, she said, voice clear and unwavering. And you will not harm me. We will face this together. Eric's eyes softened, a flicker of gratitude passing through them. You are braver than most, he said. But know this, the path ahead will test every part of us. Courage alone is not enough. We must also have wisdom, patience, and trust. The rider's laugh faded into the wind, and with it came the first taste of the trials that awaited. Alara realized that life in the mountains, once quiet and simple, was now entwined with destiny, danger, and the ancient power Eric carried within him. That night, as they watched the stars above the peaks, Alara reached for Eric's hand. I do not fully understand it, she admitted, but I know I will not leave you, not now, not ever. Eric held her hand, the faint glow of his chest marking barely visible beneath his shirt. Then we begin, he said softly, together. The mountains seemed to hold their breath. Somewhere deep within their shadows, old magic stirred, sensing the awakening of a legacy long hidden. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and full of unseen forces. Yet, for the first time, Alara felt alive in a way she had never known, her heart bound to a man whose plainness was only the surface of something far greater. And far below, the village slept, unaware that the quiet mountain man they mocked was the rightful heir of a kingdom lost to time. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying a promise of trials, secrets, and the awakening of a destiny that would change everything. The night air was thick with mist as Alara and Eric climbed higher into the mountains, the hidden path winding through ancient trees whose branches scratched the sky. A strange silence lay over the forest, broken only by the distant howl of wolves. Alara tightened her cloak around her, feeling a mixture of fear and anticipation. Eric moved ahead of her, his steps sure, his eyes alert. The glow from the sigil on his chest seemed stronger now, pulsing faintly beneath his shirt. Alara had seen it many times since their first encounter, but tonight it seemed alive, as if responding to some unseen force. "We are close," Eric said softly. "The sorcerer who seeks to claim what is mine has followed me for years. He will not leave until he finds what he wants, and he knows you are with me." Alara's heart tightened. "We can face him together," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. Eric glanced at her, his dark eyes unreadable. "Perhaps," he said, "but courage alone is not enough. There are powers at work here older than you or I. You must be ready for choices you cannot yet imagine." They reached a clearing surrounded by jagged rocks that seemed to rise like ancient sentinels. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the stones, similar to those Eric had shown her before. The air was heavy with magic, almost tangible, pressing against her chest. "This is where we confront him," Eric said. "The sorcerer has come to claim what he believes is rightfully his. He knows the old spells, the curses, and the dark promises. We must be careful." Alara swallowed. "And if he is stronger than you?" Eric's lips curved slightly, a hint of a smile in the shadowed light. "Then we will find strength together. That is why I brought you here. Not just as a companion, but as someone who can see the truth, who can make the right choices when the darkness comes." The wind shifted, carrying a chill that felt unnatural, as if the mountains themselves were warning them. A figure emerged from the mist, a tall man cloaked in black, his eyes glinting with cold intelligence. The sorcerer's presence was heavy, oppressive, as if the air itself resisted him. "Eric of the Mountains," the man said, his voice like grinding stone, "you cannot hide your power any longer. The throne is mine, and I will take it. You will submit or perish." Eric stepped forward, placing himself between the sorcerer and Alara. "You will not take what is mine," he said, voice steady, though the faint glow of his chest now brightened in defiance. The sorcerer laughed, a sound that made the trees shiver. "Defiance alone will not save you. Do you truly think your mountains can protect you from the magic of old blood?" Alara's hands trembled, but she did not step back. She remembered the lessons Eric had taught her, to notice the signs, to read the patterns of the wind, to understand the quiet whispers of the mountains. She could feel the pulse of the ancient stones beneath her feet, a rhythm that matched the glow of Eric's sigil. "I will not let him harm us," she said, voice firm. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Eric turned to her, his eyes softening for a brief moment. "Then you understand. This is not just about power. It is about trust, about knowing that together we can withstand what comes." The sorcerer raised his hand, and the air around them thickened. Shadows twisted and writhed, reaching for Eric, for Alara, for everything they held dear. Eric moved with the ease of a man born to these mountains, his hand tracing symbols in the air that glowed with a light born from his ancestors. The shadows recoiled, but the sorcerer's power was relentless, pushing against them like a storm. Alara stepped forward, following the rhythm of Eric's movements. She placed her hands on the ancient stones, feeling the magic hum through her fingers. The symbols responded, glowing brighter, forming a protective circle around them. "You have power too," Eric said, his voice low. "The courage and clarity of your heart awaken it. Do not fear it. Fear and wonder battled inside her. She had never imagined that she could influence anything so immense. Yet as her heart opened to the magic of the mountains and the trust she placed in Eric, she felt a strange strength surge through her. The sorcerer's eyes widened as he saw the stones flare with light, the shadows faltering. "Impossible!" he shouted. "No mortal can wield this power." Alara glanced at Eric, who gave a small nod. Together, they channeled the energy of the ancient stones, weaving it with the glow of Eric's sigil. The air shimmered, alive with magic, and the sorcerer was pushed back, staggering as his dark power collided with theirs. "You see," Eric said, his voice steady, though sweat dotted his brow. "Together we are stronger than any curse, any magic meant to harm us." The sorcerer fell to his knees, his cloak whipping in the wind. "This is not over," he hissed. "I will return. You cannot escape the destiny you were born into." Eric's hand clenched into a fist. "Then I will face you when the time comes. But tonight you are defeated." Alara exhaled, her knees weak, but her heart pounding with exhilaration. She had faced fear and darkness, and had discovered a strength within herself she had never known. More than that, she had done it beside Eric, whose quiet power and steadfast heart had guided her every step. As the storm of magic faded and the mist began to lift, Eric turned to her. "You were remarkable," he said, his voice soft. "I knew you would rise to this, but even I did not expect such courage." Alara smiled faintly, brushing damp hair from her face. "I only did what I had to. And I did it because I knew you would not falter beside me." Eric's eyes darkened with an emotion she could not name, pride, relief, something deeper. "We have faced the first test," he said, "but this is only the beginning. There are others who would see me destroyed, and the path to reclaiming my kingdom will not be simple." Alara nodded. "Then we face it together, whatever comes." The next morning, the mountains were quiet again, but the tension lingered in the air. The villagers whispered even more, noticing the strange light that had surrounded the clearing the night before. Some spoke of old magic, others of the curse that had haunted the mountains. But Alara and Eric paid them little mind. Their focus was on what lay ahead, the trials that would test their courage, their trust, and the bond that had begun to grow between them. Days passed, and with each passing moment, Alara's admiration for Eric deepened. She had once seen him as plain, ordinary, almost invisible in the world of nobles and crowns. Now she understood the truth. His strength was quiet but vast, shaped by the mountains, tempered by patience, and guided by a heart that knew both mercy and justice. Eric, too, began to see her in a new light. Her courage, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty were rare qualities, and he felt a growing sense of connection that went beyond duty or protection. Yet he knew the path ahead would not allow for weakness, and he remained cautious, guarding his heart even as he found himself drawn to hers. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the peaks and the valley was bathed in gold, Eric led Alara to a hidden waterfall. The water cascaded down the rocks, glowing faintly in the twilight. It was a place of quiet magic, where the old power of the mountains seemed almost tangible. "Here," Eric said, "the magic is strongest. The mountains speak most clearly. And you may hear the truth of what must be done." Alara listened, closing her eyes, feeling the rhythm of the water, the hum of the stones, and the faint pulse of Eric's sigil. For a moment she felt connected to everything, the mountains, the forest, the air, and the man beside her. She realized that she had changed, that she was no longer the frightened noble sent to marry a simple mountain man. She was a part of something larger, bound by courage, loyalty, and love. Eric watched her, his expression unreadable. "You are ready," he said quietly. "Whatever comes, you will not falter, and together we will face the darkness that waits for us." But as they stood there, the wind shifting around them, a faint sound echoed through the valley, a whisper of movement, subtle but deliberate. Somewhere in the shadows, the sorcerer's allies stirred, preparing for the next attempt to claim Eric's birthright. Alara's heart raced, but she did not step back. She had chosen her path. She had chosen to stand with him, and whatever trials awaited, she knew they would face them together, their hearts and courage intertwined. The mountains watched silently, ancient and patient, as the first threads of destiny began to weave themselves around the plain mountain man, and the woman who had chosen to see the extraordinary within him. And far below, the village slept, oblivious to the awakening of power, courage, and love that would soon change their world forever. The wind carried a promise of trials, of choices, of curses yet unbroken, and the faint glow of the mountains whispered that the story was only beginning. The first light of dawn broke over the jagged peaks, painting the mountains in gold and silver. Mist curled among the cliffs like ancient spirits, and the forest below was quiet, almost expectant. Alara stood beside Eric, her hand resting on his arm. Together, they faced the path that would decide the fate of a kingdom, a legacy, and a love that had grown stronger through trials of courage and trust. The village below remained asleep, unaware that the man they had mocked for his simplicity was about to reclaim a throne long stolen, and that the woman who had followed him into the mountains was about to prove her worth in ways that would echo through history. Eric's eyes, dark and steady, scanned the horizon. "This is where the curse must be broken," he said softly. "The sorcerer and his followers have gathered in the ruins of the old castle. They believe they can trap me and claim my birthright. They are wrong." Alara tightened her grip on his arm. "We face them together," she said. Her voice trembled slightly, but there was no fear in it, only determination. Together, they descended the mountain, the path winding through ancient trees and hidden glades. The air seemed charged with magic, humming beneath their feet, resonating with the pulse of Eric's glowing sigil. Every step brought them closer to the ruins of the fortress where the final confrontation awaited. When they arrived, the ruins were cloaked in shadows, the stones cracked and overgrown with ivy. The sorcerer and his followers stood at the central courtyard, their eyes glowing faintly with dark enchantments. The air was thick with tension, the silence almost suffocating. "Eric of the Mountains," the sorcerer hissed, stepping forward. "You think you can reclaim what is mine. Your power is nothing compared to what I wield. Surrender and I may spare your life." Eric stepped forward, his presence calm but commanding. "This is not a matter of power alone," he said. "It is a matter of justice, courage, and the truth of my lineage. I will not surrender to lies, and I will not let fear dictate my actions." The sorcerer's laugh was cold and cruel. "Then face the consequences." Dark magic surged around him, twisting the air into jagged shapes, shadows that clawed and reached. Eric and Alara did not retreat. Instead, they stood together, their hands joined, the glow from Eric's sigil spreading to surround them both. The ancient power of the mountains responded to their unity, weaving a shield of light that pushed the darkness back. "You have power," the sorcerer spat, "but it is weak. Mortal hearts cannot control the forces you pretend to understand." Alara took a step forward, closing her eyes. She focused on the rhythm of the stones beneath her, the pulse of the forest, and the heartbeat of the man beside her. The glow from Eric's sigil pulsed faster, and she felt her own energy rising, a warmth that intertwined with his. Together, their courage and trust formed a bond stronger than any dark magic. "True power," Eric said, his voice ringing through the courtyard, "is not taken by fear or lies. It is earned through courage, love, and loyalty." The sorcerer shrieked as the light enveloped the ruins, the shadows twisting and recoiling. The dark enchantments could not withstand the force of unity, and the magic of the mountains, awakened by Alara and Eric, broke the spells one by one. With a final surge, the sorcerer was thrown to the ground, defeated, powerless against the bond that had grown between the two of them. His followers fled into the forest, leaving the ruins silent and still. Eric lowered his hand, the glow of the sigil fading but leaving a warmth in the air. He turned to Alara, eyes filled with a mixture of relief, admiration, and something deeper. "We did it," he said softly. "The curse is broken, and the path to reclaiming my kingdom is open." Alara smiled, her heart racing. "We did it together," she said. She had faced fear, darkness, and the weight of destiny, and she had not faltered. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. In the days that followed, Eric and Alara journeyed to the capital of the Lost Kingdom. The people, once fearful and divided, began to recognize Eric as the rightful heir. His presence, tempered by humility and courage, inspired loyalty and hope. Alara stood by his side, not as a noblewoman seeking comfort or status, but as a partner who had shared trials, danger, and the awakening of a destiny neither could have faced alone. The palace, long abandoned and overgrown with ivy, had begun to crumble. Eric walked through the halls with Alara beside him, feeling the weight of his ancestors' legacy. He placed his hand on the throne, and for the first time, the air seemed to shimmer with recognition, as if the spirits of the past acknowledged his return. Alara followed him, sensing the ancient magic in every corner. "It feels alive," she whispered. "Like it has been waiting for you." Eric nodded. "It has, and it has been waiting for us to face it together." The people of the kingdom began to gather outside the palace gates, curious and cautious. Many had heard rumors of the mountain man who had survived the mountain's trials, who had faced the sorcerer and returned victorious. Now they saw him standing tall and calm, with a woman at his side who radiated courage and loyalty. "Eric," a man called, "you have returned. We thought all hope was lost." Eric raised his hand, quieting the crowd. "I have returned," he said, "not alone, but with someone who has proven that courage and love can overcome even the darkest forces. This kingdom will rise again, not through fear or power alone, but through unity, trust, and compassion." The people cheered, and for the first time in generations, hope spread through the kingdom like sunlight over the mountains. Eric's reign began not with a crown or decree, but with the quiet strength of one who had walked through darkness and emerged tempered by it. Alara stood beside him, feeling a sense of fulfillment she had never known. She had chosen to follow a man who seemed ordinary, and in doing so had discovered extraordinary courage, love, and purpose. She realized that true greatness was not in titles or appearances, but in the choices made in the face of fear and the loyalty shown to those we love. Weeks later, the palace was restored, not to the grandeur of old, but to a place of warmth, wisdom, and life. Eric and Alara worked together, listening to the people, understanding their needs, and guiding them with fairness and compassion. The mountains remained their sanctuary, the forest their guide, and the magic of the old stones a reminder that courage, trust, and love could shape destiny itself. One evening, as the sun set over the peaks, casting the kingdom in gold and crimson, Eric and Alara stood on the palace balcony. The wind carried the scent of pine and earth, and the faint glow of the mountains reminded them of the path they had walked together. "You have changed me," Eric said quietly, "not just by standing beside me, but by showing me that courage, love, and trust can overcome any darkness." Alara smiled, resting her hand on his. "And you have changed me," she said. "You taught me to see beyond appearances, to understand the strength in patience and humility, and to believe in the extraordinary even when it hides behind simplicity." For a long moment they stood in silence, the mountains around them bathed in the last light of day. The kingdom below was alive with hope and renewal, and the wind whispered that this was not the end, but a beginning. As night fell, the stars shimmered above the peaks, and the magic of the mountains seemed to hum softly in recognition. Alara and Eric knew that challenges would come, that destiny was never fully at rest, but they also knew that together, they could face whatever the future held. They turned from the balcony, walking side by side through the palace halls, their hearts bound by trust, courage, and love. The journey had tested them, the mountains had shaped them, and the darkness had revealed their strength. And somewhere high above, in the silent peaks, the glow of the ancient stones pulsed faintly, a reminder that even in victory, the world was full of mystery, magic, and possibilities yet to be discovered. The kingdom was no longer lost. A plain mountain man had reclaimed his throne, and a woman who had chosen to see the extraordinary within him had become his equal, partner, and guide. Together, they would shape the future, not through fear or force, but through wisdom, courage, and love. The mountains whispered their approval, the wind carried the story far and wide, and the hearts of Eric and Alara beat as one, ready for whatever new chapters awaited them.